Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome to our Community Trust Talks. I'm Wanda Allen Abraha, and I'm the Director of the Human Relations Department here with the City of Winston-Salem. We're really happy and excited to bring you tonight's Trust Talks. We're particularly excited because we have noticed here in the community, we being largely our Human Relations Commission, that there have been all sorts of talks and discussions and rallies here locally about the Michael Brown shooting in Fenton, Missouri. And of course, that occurred out of state, out of the city, and so on and so forth, but it has sparked a national discussion. And so certainly what we want to do is not be remiss, and we want to make sure that we address some of the concerns that a lot of our local citizens and residents have. And a lot of the concerns stem around, well, what do we have in place locally? If something like this were to happen here in Winston-Salem, do we have policies and procedures in place? Are our law enforcement officials trained adequately? And what does adequate mean? And so those are the types of things that we really wanted to discuss tonight, and we're very fortunate to have a very esteemed panel with us. And so before we move on to the panel and other protocols for the evening, I would like to acknowledge that we have some elected officials amongst us. We have with us Mr. James Taylor, who is the City Council member for the Southeast Ward. Mr. Taylor, thank you for joining us tonight. And we also have Council Member Jeff McIntosh with us, and Council Member McIntosh is from the Northwest Ward. And so if either one of you gentlemen would like to come up, address the audience, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, you're welcome to do so. Okay. And we have with us our City Manager, Mr. Lee Garrity. Mr. Garrity, thank you for joining us as well. All right, so I want to acknowledge the people who actually came up with this concept. We are advised, we being the Human Relations Department, is advised by a volunteer board. The board is made up of community volunteers, and these community volunteers come from all walks of life, and they represent a very diverse group of people that our community is. And so I would like to recognize and acknowledge all Human Relations Commissioners at this time. If you would please stand behind me and in front of me. Now, this idea, as I said before, was actually the brainchild of the Human Relations Commission. And one of the commissioners in particular, Mr. Michael McIntosh, who is behind me, was the one who said, you know, we really need to do something here in our community to talk about this. It's being talked about, and we as the Human Relations Commission, we need to take the lead and try to pull in some of our local law enforcement leaders to have this discussion with a broader scope. And so I'd really like to acknowledge and thank Commissioner Clinton for coming up with this and for pushing us to do this forum tonight. So Commissioner Clinton, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And it was not the most popular idea, I know, with a lot of people, but a lot of people have actually approached us and thanked us for going ahead and trying to be proactive in having this discussion. So again, that's sort of the intro to why we're here and what we're doing. Trust Talks has been going on for about 3 years with our police department, and the purpose is to build community relationships. We're trying to build a rapport, to build trust between the Winston-Salem Police Department and the community, the citizens and residents of Winston-Salem. And so, again, feel free to ask questions. We will have index cards available for those of you who may have questions for our panel. And what we'll do is take those questions from you, and we'll bring them to our moderator, who will then read the questions into the microphone and have the panel to respond accordingly. And just so you know, this is being televised. It is being video recorded by WSTV 13, and it will be shown also on the city's website on demand. So for those who weren't able to make it tonight, if you have family, friends, acquaintances who weren't able to make it, please have them to check this out on the city's website or to tune in to WSTV 13. So thank you to our marketing and communications department for videotaping tonight. All right, so did we have any questions, anything that we need to address before I turn it over to Commissioner Clinton? All right, and thank you to my staff. Thank you to Jamie Waldeck, Chris Reyes, Adolfo Briseño, and Jenny Cuca for all of their hard work in helping to make tonight possible as well. Thank you very much, everybody, for all of your hard work. Okay, without further ado, I'm turning it over to Commissioner Clinton.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, my name is Michael Clinton. I'll be your moderator for tonight. I am the Human Relations Community Committee Chairman, and it's an honor to moderate this forum and session tonight. And we have an esteemed panel with us this afternoon. And so we're going to start with having them to introduce themselves. And we're going to start with my closest here, with Mr. Jim O'Neill.
I'm Jim O'Neill, and I'm the Forsyth County District Attorney.
Hey, I'm Lori Sykes. I'm an assistant city attorney, and I represent the police and fire departments.
Good evening. I'm Barry Roundtree, Chief of Police.
Yes, good evening. It's Bill Schatzman, and I'm the sheriff here in Forsyth County.
Hello, my name is Shantini Palmer, and I'm the Student Relation Committee Chairperson.
Great. Thank you again for being here this afternoon. Given some of the controversy and sensitive national incidents, we wanted to expand the traditional scope of our trust talks here in the city of Winston-Salem to include the local law enforcement community as a whole. We also want to provide our local community with a venue to positively interface with our local law enforcement officials while learning about policies and protocols that are in place that would prevent and/or would address situations such as the Michael Brown incident in Fenton, Missouri. Each panelist will have a topic of discussion. Also, the audience questions will be submitted, as Mrs. Alberhide mentioned, on index cards, and I will then read those questions to be addressed by the panel. Okay? So we're going to get right into our talks with our first question, and we're going to address this first one to Chief Roundtree with the police department. Chief Roundtree, what is the police department's policy regarding arresting and apprehending unnamed suspects? If we can talk about that just real briefly.
You mean unarmed suspects?
Unarmed suspects, excuse me, yes, sir.
Okay. Certainly, our policies and actions are guarded by two different documents per se. North Carolina General Statute 15A 401, also the Police Department's General Order 1.27 dictates and authorizes how any person is arrested, whether they're armed or unarmed, and the use of force that the officer is allowed to employ. Of course, in addition to that, the policy and the expectation of any officer of the Winston-Salem Police Department is to treat everyone with dignity and respect. Of course, the officer's escalation of force is dependent upon the action of the suspect. By North Carolina General Statute 15A 401, which I mentioned earlier, the officer can escalate his use of force depending on the actions of the person. As such, if the person is displaying combative or resistive behavior in the process of being arrested, the officer is authorized to escalate his use of force in order to arrest that person.
Great, thank you so much. Also, if you could please explain how police officers are trained and when and how to use lethal versus non-lethal force.
Okay. All of our police officers are certified by the state of North Carolina through the basic law enforcement training program. Our training program is in excess of what the state standards are. Pretty much we exceed the state standards in our training. The officers are trained to use lethal and non-lethal force. With that, our officers are trained to use their hands as techniques to arrest individuals. They're trained to use an ASP baton to arrest individuals. We also have a tool that is called pepper spray. Also, we have an electronic control device, which is our taser. And lastly, we have a firearm that can be used also in the lethal force. But with that said, we also train our officers doing their basic law enforcement training and also as part of their yearly in-service training, we go through subject control and arrest techniques, what we call SCAT. That's where the officers use, they can use techniques other than a firearm, they can use techniques other than ASP baton, where we teach the officers to control subjects during arrests. Also, the training for the taser, of course, that's ongoing. Each officer receives about 24 to 30 hours of training during their basic law enforcement training. And also, every year, there's a review on each one of the tools that we carry to ensure that they are proficient in their use and also that they are updated on the most recent updates and tactics for each one of those tools.
All right, great, thank you. I would like to also just add, thank you again, Chief Roundtree. We are very fortunate to live in a city that is, that I consider to be very proactive and have a great law enforcement. And I just want to just briefly talk about Trust Talks as well. One of the things that Trust Talks was created about 3 years ago when the Winston-Salem Police Department approached the Human Relations Department with the proposed partnership to foster positive dialogue and discussion within the community regarding bettering lines of communication and trust between police officers and members of the community. Members of the Human Relations staff and Human Relations Commissions agreed to facilitate these discussions. And I've had an opportunity to be a part of at least 3 or 4 of the Trust Talks here in the city of Winston-Salem, and I can honestly say they have been extremely beneficial to me. Our police department staff has been great to work with the Trust Talks, and I just wanted to thank you again, Chief Roundtree, for being a part of those Trust Talks that we have several times a year. And so we do that, and again, to create discussion between the police department and citizens of Winston-Salem. So again, thank you, Chief Roundtree.
Thank you.
All right, I want to go to one of our Human Relations Commissioners, Mrs. Palmer. My question for you is, as a business owner, a mother in our community, what do you think are the general perceptions of public trust with regards to our local law enforcement?
In my opinion, I have a very positive opinion of our local police department as well as our sheriff's department. I've had encounters with both at my facilities. And even with the point of they are sitting, one of the police cars is sitting out in my parking lot. So that helps a lot with just knowing that the police department is there and near. I've had incidents at my facility where I've had to call on the police department to come because of a custody issue. And they were very warm and friendly, and basically just had to state what the law was and made the person feel very comfortable and safe, not being combative towards him. But my opinion of me just personally dealing with the police, they're very professional, never been hostile, and just really come into the building, want to talk with the children that are there, because I do own a child care center. So my own opinion is a very positive one that I've had with the departments.
Okay, great. If you could also describe the benefit of the Trust Talks. You've been a part of the Trust Talks here in our city with the police department staff. How have that been beneficial for you?
Well, I think the Trust Talks are very beneficial to the community. It serves a purpose where it gives dialogue between the community as well as the department. It humanizes the department, for it allows the community to see that these are mothers, fathers, coaches, just basic people that live in your community who are there to protect and serve. The trust talks, it breaks off into smaller groups where it's divided in various sections, that you do have the community and you do have the police department's members that are a part of the group. And there you do learn about their background, their lifestyle, how they grew up, where they went to school at. So you do get the human side of the police officers, other than they're just there to enforce the law. But it is very helpful, and I wish that all of our trust talks were well participated, that the community do come out, not to be afraid of the police department, but just to come and share your thoughts, get a dialogue, get to know the police, so we can have that friendly officer in the community again.
Very good. Thank you very much. And that brings me to my next question for Chief Roundtree. As she just mentioned, being a part of the community. Chief Roundtree, please discuss the status of the neighborhood police substations.
Okay. We're in the process of having 3 district police stations or substations. Right now, that process is contingent upon a bond that's going to be voted upon. But the ideal is to put the police in the community that they serve. Ideally, we would have one in each of the 3 patrol districts. The officers that work in those districts will respond out of that police headquarters. Number one, it'll build trust in the community. It can also relieve some of the tension in the community. It also gives the community a sense of better police service. Currently, we think that project will go forward, and we would like to see it go forward because we think it'll be a benefit and a boost to the community as a whole.
Thank you. An additional question for Chief Roundtree. Now, recently we've heard about in the media the new body cameras for the police department. How will the body cameras be used by police officers?
Okay, just as a point of background, we started the body camera project in 2012 with about 30 cameras. Most recently, for fiscal year 13-14, we purchased 95 more body cameras. Those cameras were deployed last week. We had training on the cameras, so each officer that's assigned the camera will be fully aware of how to use it, when to use it, and when to operate it. Those cameras will be used and operated for any police interaction. As any interaction with a citizen, the officers, by policy, they have to turn those cameras on. We see benefits on both sides. Of course, the obvious benefit is that it's going to help law enforcement, and it's also going to help the community. We feel that having the body cameras, we will be more accountable and more transparent to the citizens that we serve. Also, the body cameras will help improve the high quality of service that we already serve and already provide to the community and city of Winston-Salem. Also, studies have shown that the cameras can improve the performance of the officers, and it also can shape the way individuals interact with our police officers. It can also help prove or disprove complaints against police officers, where when you have that video, it's not really a question about who did what and who said what. Also, it can assist us in the prosecution of our cases, because it will be some footage where we will have information and documentation that will assist the DA's office in the prosecution of a case. But pretty much that's how the body camera project will work. Right now, it's deployed in our Field Services Bureau, our Downtown Bike Patrol, our DWI Task Force, and we also have 10 assigned to our high school resource officers.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay. And one more question for Chief Roundtree. Concerning your staff, is staff composition at the police department representative of the diversity of the public?
Right now, currently, it's not where we would like to see it. It's not totally representative of the population of Winston-Salem. Last census, the population of Winston-Salem is about 51% white, about 34% black or African American, and 1% other. In the police department, right now we have about 79% are white, 15% are black, and about 6% are Hispanic. But we're constantly working on that. We have several initiatives, several programs. We have a scholarship where we're actively recruiting minority applicants for our basic law enforcement training class.
Thank you, Chief Roundtree. I want to thank you again for being a part of the panel and a part of the discussion. Thank you very much. All right, I want to address our next questions to our next panel guest, Sheriff Schatzman. Thank you again for being part of this Community Trust Talks. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sheriff Schatzman, my first question for you is, what is your department's policy regarding arresting and apprehending unarmed suspects?
Well, thank you. We adhere to the same policies that all law enforcement officers must abide by in North Carolina, that which Chief Roundtree has already explained. There is a continuum of force that all law enforcement officers are trained in, from no force at all to lethal force. Officers are trained to use force that is necessary to accomplish the law enforcement mission, as stated in, as Chief said, North Carolina General Statute 15A 401, and certainly by our internal policies, and which happens to be number 374. But the issue at hand with law enforcement acting in the conduct of their business is, the key word is necessity. It is what is necessary to accomplish the mission. And after the fact, what does the evidence show? What does the officer say he believed or thought, what he saw, the circumstances, whether no force was used or lethal force was used, the officer must explain his actions. If lethal force is used in a law enforcement environment, then an investigation takes place. It usually is conducted by an external organization. In our case, we conduct an internal investigation, but we also contact the State Bureau of Investigation, an agency not involved. They come in and conduct an investigation, an evidentiary search or an evidentiary investigation to be presented to the district attorney's office, which establishes the actions of the officer and the actions of the suspect. And so that follows along with our policy and the state statute. But again, it's a continuum of force that Chief mentioned, from hands to batons to chemical sprays, to electronic devices that incapacitate, to include deadly force. Certainly, and I've been in this business since 1970, and I have never met a law enforcement officer who got up in the morning going to work wanting to hurt anyone. 99.9 to the 10th power, officers are out there, law enforcement, whether sheriffs or law enforcement, they're out to help the community they serve, and they take on a big responsibility. I digress a moment. Our core values that's on our challenge coin is integrity, trust, and compassion. Certainly in any modicum, any measure of business, any workplace, you have to have integrity. The person has to be honest and do what is right. But we put a lot of sense to trust, and that is, not only do we trust our employees to do the right thing, but a law enforcement agency cannot serve and protect the community without having the trust of that community. So we place a lot of value on external trust as well as internal trust. And certainly we place a lot of value on compassion, both in our jail, where we have 1,000 beds. We currently have over 700 people housed there, either serving small sentences or awaiting a judicial officer's decision at court. So, and all of those people are having not the best time or the best time of their lives. So we have to have compassion. So integrity, trust, and compassion. Trust is a big one there, and we work hard. Our deputy sheriffs and all law enforcement that I've met, we're so fortunate to have such a great Winston-Salem Police Department, a city police department, and a Kernersville Police Department that do extremely well. We have a great community, both in Kernersville, Winston, and the unincorporated areas and the 6 municipalities in the county. We have those are led by good elected officials. The communities are involved and engaged. They have good services. We have good public safety services. But our deputy sheriffs follow the same laws and policies, perhaps almost word for word, internal policies, that any law enforcement agency has. That's mandatory by law. We have, as Chief said, we have yearly, multiple times during each year, we have mandatory continuing education. All of that includes subject control, which are physical restraints, arrest procedures, shooting the handgun or the rifle or the shotgun is part of that. So that happens on a continuing and regular basis for all sworn officers. Our detention officers, which we have 270 plus of those who run the jail, they have continuing education in terms of how they deal with inmates, how they deal with people who are being detained in our law enforcement detention center prior to trial. So again, we comply with and adhere to both state law and policy. We have a very strict internal policing unit, as the city police has, and internal affairs, who aggressively investigate allegations of misconduct. And if that allegation of misconduct rises to a level, then we bring in a state investigation, and that matter is, if it rises to a criminal event or a criminal allegation, it's given over to the district attorney for review and proper adjudication or proper proceeding. So that's where we are with that. And again, all law enforcement agencies are pretty much right down the line on all of that.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Just had a question to come from the audience I would like to read. This is to Sheriff Schatzman.
Mm-hmm.
Do public pressure hinders objectivity of investigations in such cases as Michael Brown?
Does public pressure? Well, if I understand what you're asking, in our world today, our news cycle driven world today, often media gets involved very quickly. In our digital age, media is out there. It's on the street. It's on the scene. It drives emotions on both sides of an issue, whether you believe one way or you believe the other. So there is pressure brought to bear by media's being there, and there is pressure brought to bear by the emotions of those people who are related to or have knowledge of a victim in a particular case. Media drives and events that spill into the street often direct the public to draw conclusions that are not based on facts. And it's the job of the investigating agency, and then normally if it's a shooting relating, if it's a lethal use of force that relates in a death, there's an outside agency that comes in. It often is a state agency. It can be a federal agency. For 24 years prior to my being elected sheriff, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I was an agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and I've investigated many cases involving alleged police brutality, where there was evidence of someone being hurt in the enforcement of law, and an allegation that the person being hurt was not hurt in a lawful manner. So the FBI was brought in to investigate. And so those are the options that the community has, either a state agency or a federal agency that investigates and polices the activities of local law enforcement. Hopefully, at the end of the day, there is good evidence that indicates exactly what happens, more so than the emotion-driven beliefs that occur when the incident first occurs.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate that. Okay, my next question I'm going to address to Mr. Jim O'Neill. What evidence is needed to determine charges related to police-involved shootings?
Well, let me explain to everybody how it would work when we do have a police shooting here. As the district attorney, it's the worst call, of course, you receive in the middle of the night, that there's a shooting out there where, you have an officer who may be hit, or in the alternative, you have a civilian that may be hit. The first step that we take in the district attorney's office, when you have an officer who has shot a civilian, regardless of the circumstances, the first thing we do is we call in the State Bureau of Investigation, the SBI. You've heard Sheriff Schatzman refer to them. The purpose of bringing in a group like the SBI is to assure the community that if it was a Winston-Salem officer that shot a civilian, you wouldn't want the Winston-Salem Police Department to investigate that shooting, because it doesn't necessarily build confidence in the community that the investigation is thorough and complete. And so the SBI, with what those of us in law enforcement know, just impeccable reputations, come in, they interview all the witnesses, they collect the evidence, and they present a report to the district attorney's office. Now, in terms of what sort of evidence we look for, one of the things about Forsyth County that is unique to any place else in the state is what we developed a couple of years ago, and we call it the pager system. And what the pager system refers to, and law enforcement understands this, is that whenever a felony is committed in Forsyth County, regardless of day or night, law enforcement will call the on-call pager system, and a district attorney, an assistant district attorney, sometimes it's me, has to pick up that phone in the middle of the night and talk the case through with the officer to be sure that before they arrest this person, they've collected all the necessary evidence, they have talked to all the witnesses, and it strengthens the case from the beginning and prevents, we believe, any wrongful arrests or wrongful charges that could occur. And again, Forsyth County is unique to this. We are the only place in the state that does this. And as a result, there was a newspaper article not too long ago that the News and Observer out of Raleigh put together, and they looked at all the district attorney's offices across the state, and the one county that had the fewest amount of dismissals, the number one county in the state, was Forsyth. And so we take a lot of pride in that, being sure that we have done, and we've held law enforcement to the same standard that we want when we get into court. So an officer can arrest someone when they have what we call probable cause. And what is probable cause? Probable cause, the legal definition, is trustworthy facts or information that lead a police officer or sheriff deputy to believe that a crime has been or is being committed. What we want in Forsyth County, again, which is unique across the state, is when that evidence comes in, we hold them to the same standard as if we were going to go to court the next day. And that standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. We don't want any doubt that we've got the right person and that we've got evidence that's admissible in court. And so that's what we look for.
Great, thank you so much. I tell you, I consider some of the information that we're getting today, thank you, very important. And I, again, just want to thank our panel for sharing, because this kind of information helps empower the citizens of Winston-Salem to know that there are policies and procedures in place. And so, again, it's very refreshing to hear some of the things that are in place in our law enforcement and also from our district attorney's office. All right, my next question is for Ms. Lori Sykes from the city attorney's office. And my question for you is, how does the city attorney's office work with the police department and DA's office?
Thank you. In my position, I represent the police department on a day-to-day basis. And so any legal issues they have, any questions, I'm there for them like the DA. I'm on call 24/7 and do get those middle-of-the-night phone calls also, trying to guide officers, answer their questions, and assist them with the situation so that we resolve it there at the moment. One of the primary responsibilities that I have with the police department is training, and we do devote a significant amount of time and effort to training our officers, again, beyond what the minimum requirements are for the state. And particularly as to use of force, the second week that the new recruits are in class, we start our block on constitutional law and the laws of arrest, search, investigation, and we cover in a very introductory way the use of force. And then they move on later in their training to an entire block of use of force training given by certified instructors who are experts and extremely experienced in that area. And then, as Chief Roundtree said, we do annual training, which includes use of force. And if there is a significant case that is decided that would affect the way we handle situations, then, and this is something that the chief has supported very strongly since he took office, is that we don't just send out an email to officers, that I will go with training staff if we feel like we need to and attend roll calls. And so we get face-to-face in front of all the officers, explain to them, here's a new decision, it may affect the way you do things. We're there to answer questions and make sure they understand the issues. I did work with the county previously, so I've had the pleasure of working with Jim and his office for several years now. We have an excellent working relationship, and we do coordinate efforts, training, we share information, and he has implemented several programs that the police department participates in. So I would say that we have a very good coordinated working relationship.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. I've got several questions from the audience. I'll try to get to some of these as well. There's another question I wanted to address with Chief Roundtree. I have teenage sons that live in our city. And of course, we hear about racial profiling and that type of thing that happens across the country. I wanted to ask you, in regards to that, how has the police department handled accusations of racial profiling? What measures are in place to prevent and address such perceptions?
Okay. Thank you. If I understand correctly, you asked, how have we handled accusations in the past?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess just to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. Racial profiling is the use of an individual's race or ethnicity by law enforcement personnel as a key factor in deciding whether we're going to take some kind of law enforcement action, whether it's a stop, a search, or arrest. At the police department, we don't teach and we don't condone racial profiling, even though an individual may be stopped for speeding, for example. Oftentimes, that person feels that they were stopped because of their race, regardless of what color they may be. That person may feel that the only reason why they were stopped was because of their race. In the past, we have dealt with the accusation of racial profiling in our stationary checkpoints. And in that, it was assumed that we set up stationary checkpoints in certain locations across the city. And part of that was due to some information that the police department submitted. And the way that we dealt with that to correct it is that we instituted additional policies to ensure that our license checks went through a certain process before they were actually implemented. So now that's in the police department's policy, where there's a supervisory approval and a whole range of things that the officers have to do before they can just automatically go out and set up a checkpoint.
Sheriff Schatzman, if you could you also talk about that as well? How does your department handle accusations of racial profiling, and what measures are in place to prevent such perceptions?
Sure. Again, training, certainly we have policy against it, okay? We have policy prohibiting the basis for law enforcement action based on someone's race or ethnicity. That is against policy. It certainly is trained, and the yearly continuing training enforces that, reinforces that, and we don't condone that in any manner, shape, or form, and have not had issues. We have not had accusations that were found to be substantiated. I think the statistics are in 2013, we had 4 complaints. All were investigated and found to be unfounded or unsubstantiated. So in the thousands of stops that we make and the thousands of contacts that we are involved in yearly, we don't see that as a problem in the sheriff's office.
Fantastic. All right. This next question came from our audience as well, and this is addressed to either the sheriff, the DA, or the police chief. It states, many general perceptions of law enforcement and our legal system are racially divided, with many minorities feeling as if they are guilty until proven innocent. What is being done to bridge the racial disconnect and perceptions in our community? And either one of you can address that if you like.
It is probably one of the most difficult things that a human being can confront, is a preconceived notion that something that something is. I know in the sheriff's office we train and reinforce the notion that all are, in our enforcement of law, all are not guilty unless there is compelling evidence to indicate that they are, and that we take appropriate action based on what the officer sees and hears. And we do that as respectfully as we can. Again, to be very mindful of the trust that we have that have been placed in us as public safety service personnel. We try, I think all law enforcement tries, to act in a manner that says everyone is respected, everyone is a valued citizen, and no group of people by any definition or by any characterization doesn't get a fair deal. Now, this is not a perfect world, and we're all people, and sometimes bad things happen. But we take it, when something bad happens, or we find out that something has not gone the way we believe it should have, we take immediate and compelling, drastic action to fix that. We do that in the legal system with the district attorney's office. We do that in our legal counsel. We have legal counsel for the sheriff's office. City police has legal counsel. Our actions are guided by, again, the law and our training. And we engage the public in such a manner that we are professional and we are responsible for what we do, and we hold each other accountable. And if you do that, professional, responsible, and accountable, and you work very diligently to make the community believe that that's the way you are, then I think that goes to perception, to public trust. But changing somebody's perception is a difficult thing. We work hard to do that. I know Chief can address it, Jim O'Neill, DA, can address that, but I know, having worked with them for years and years, they work the same way in law enforcement and district attorney's office.
I'll just add that, of course, as was stated, we can't change a person's perceptions. Your perceptions are your realities. But what we can do is make sure that we do what's right, that we're professional in all our actions and duties. We do have training that's ongoing to help work on these kind of things. We have diversity training so we can deal with all types of people in our city. We're working on our recruiting so our police department is more reflective of the community. Also in this city, you can file a complaint if you felt that, or if you feel that you were not treated properly or professionally by a police officer. You can file a formal complaint that's investigated through our professional standards division. And if you're not satisfied at that level, you can also go to the Citizen Police Review Board. So we're constantly working to shape and change some of those perceptions that are out there. We don't want that to be the case with our citizens here in Winston-Salem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. You just mentioned the Citizens Policy Review Board. This question is to Ms. Sykes. What is the role of the Citizens Police Review Board?
The Citizens Police Review Board was created by the City Council by ordinance to hear complaints once the investigation was carried out by the police department. If a citizen was not happy with the way, with the decision that was made by the police department and the decision that was made by the police chief, then they can appeal to this board. There are 11 members that are appointed by City Council, and so it is an independent body that will engage in fact-finding, will listen to the citizen, and then make a determination based on what they have discovered. There's a brochure that's put out by the city that explains how to make a complaint and how the process works. And then, of course, the ordinance is available also on the city website so that citizens know that they have this option.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. This next question is for Mr. O'Neill. All right. And this comes from the audience, and it reads, what type of procedure would you follow to address an accusation that an unarmed citizen was shot dead by a police officer?
I think this is what I was touching on before when I was referencing how the procedure works, and this may have been written before I answered that last question. But again, what happens is if a police officer shoots a civilian, before a determination or decision is made whether or not the shooting is justified, the very first thing that happens is that the SBI comes in to investigate, and they take over the entire investigation. And I think it's also important for the community to understand that it's not because we don't trust the police department or the sheriff's department, and it has nothing to do with their abilities or their capabilities, but it's to ensure the public that the investigation has been done properly and that the Winston-Salem Police Department officers are not investigating their own, nor are the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department deputies investigating their own. So that is the procedure that takes place.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. And this next question is to any one of our panelists here. And it states, why do you feel the Ferguson incident cannot happen in Winston-Salem? And the second part of that question is, why do you feel the Ferguson incident can happen in Winston-Salem? And this is to anyone of the panel.
Nope. See nobody jumping up on this one. Look, the first thing that should be said, certainly the incident that's being referred to is certainly a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the person who was killed. It's a tragedy for the officer involved. It's a tragedy for the community or the families of both, and then the greater family of the community. Can that happen in any community on the planet? Yes, it can. Certainly can. God forbid it should happen in this community. We certainly wouldn't want that to happen here, and for all of the reasons that you could possibly think about. Certainly we don't want anybody to lose their life under any circumstances. But I would caution everyone in the room and those who ponder asking questions about that incident that we know very little about what happened. In fact, we know probably factually none of what happened. All of that will come out after thorough review and investigation by investigating agencies and the district attorneys that are involved, and certainly attorneys probably representing several people involved in the case. So again, officers are guided by their training and law to use force that is necessary and only force that is necessary. And officers must be able to articulate why they used the degree of force that they used to accomplish the mission, which is to protect and serve the community. So again, we pray every night, as you would pray every night, that officers are safe and that the community is safe and that everyone does the right thing. And that's why we have review. Anytime any force is used, doesn't have to be lethal force, and the district attorney's office can, and the city police council can address that. Anytime we have any force that's used, we investigate that. We investigate it internally. Agencies do, and if it rises to a serious enough allegation or an allegation of a violation of law, then it's investigated by another agency to, again, ensure that a disinterested, uninvolved, trained law enforcement agency, whether it's federal FBI or state SBI, looks at the facts and presents those facts to a judicial officer for review.
Okay, great. Ms. Sykes, another question for you. Please describe the overall internal affairs process for officers involved in a shooting.
When there, potentially when you have an officer-involved shooting, where an officer is involved in a shooting against a citizen, then there are potentially 3 different investigations. You have the SBI investigation that's been addressed. You have a potential criminal investigation if there were determined to be criminal acts by the citizen. And then you have the internal affairs, or for the police department, it's called the Professional Standards Division. And the goal of the Professional Standards investigation is to determine if any police officers or employees violated policies. The SBI and the DA's office have their role as to the shooting, but Professional Standards looks at our internal policies with deference to the SBI investigation to determine if our officers acted appropriately. And if they did not, then there's action taken. If they did, then that determination is made.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's go back to one of the questions from the audience. And this is for Commissioner Palmer. What more can the community members do to help support these efforts between law enforcement and the community?
I think that we need to have more of this conversation, dialogue, for the community, for our citizens, to understand the position, the questions, the current issues, just what we're doing and talking, having dialogue. And what way to do it is with our trust talks for it to go into the community where the people or our community members can get an understanding. So I just think that for the Human Relation Commission, that is a positive effort that we have to put forth to make sure that this type of action does happen in our community, so we all can have a fair understanding of each other. And it makes, it just makes us, well, the city of Winston-Salem, a better community.
Very well. Thank you.
I might piggyback on that. I know that in the sheriff's office, we have a Citizens Academy that we invite everyone to attend. I know the city police has the same type of educational process for the community. We have a very robust volunteer base. They're called the Sheriff Citizens Patrol that is trained in certain aspects of what we do, and that helps us tremendously. And anytime we can engage in the public in a non-enforcement, in a non-enforcement role, to educate the public about what public safety is about and how we do that, and how we train and monitor our own activities, and how we interface with the courts, is a bonus. And we invite and recruit and look for ways to get more people to involve in that situation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sheriff Schatzman. Yes, sir. Thank you. And again, I would like to encourage the the citizens of Winston-Salem to get involved with some of the initiatives in the Sheriff Department as it relates to educating our community and with the police department. And also, as Commissioner Palmer has stated, be a part of the trust talks. This is something that the Human Relations Commission, along with the police department, has put together for the citizens to be able to voice their concerns and opinions as it relates to our community and the police department. So again, I would like to encourage our citizens of Winston-Salem to take part in those initiatives. All right, just had a couple more questions for you. All right. All right, let's address this one. Let me just read over this real quick. Okay, very good. Good question. This comes from our audience as well. This states, and this is for any of our panelists, since there is a sense of unrest among young black males when asked to stop by a law enforcement officer, tell us how that individual should act. So if a black male is stopped, how should a black male should act? And I would like to actually address that first. Being a father of two African-American teenagers, one of the things that I've done is sat down with my boys and first and explained to them that respect goes a long way with any authority. And I've shared with them, this is how you are to act when you're stopped for whatever speeding ticket or whatever. You're first to have respect for authority. So I think for me as a parent, that's the first thing is respect. Because it does go a long way. And I've shared that with my sons, and if they're ever stopped for any reason, you don't respond, you don't get emotional, you follow the instructions of that authority. And so that's what I've done as a parent. And so I would like to, again, extend that same question to any of the panelists. How should a black male act when they're stopped by enforcement?
I don't want to just say a black male.
Yeah.
I think it's anybody
There you go.
that's stopped by law enforcement.
There you go.
Be respectful as you would want to be respected. Debating and arguing on the side of the road is not the place to do it. If you don't agree with the charge or the stop, there's a forum and there's a place where you can express that. In the police department, of course, you can file a complaint the next day. You know, depending on what time of day it is, you can do it that day. You can always call and ask to speak with a supervisor. But for lack of a better word, ranting and raving and showing out on the side of the road, if you're stopped, is not the place to do it. So that's for anyone. That's not just for a black male. That's for any citizen with any law enforcement agency.
All right, anyone else on the panel would like to address that?
Well, I would just say, in support of what the chief has said, you know, my dad was a highway patrolman in Connecticut. He spent 40 years in public safety services, and his advice to me prior to the Marine Corps and after the Marine Corps was, yes, sir, no, sir, and thank you, sir. Those are the only things you say to a law enforcement officer if you're being contacted by one. And I've said that to my children too, my son and my daughter. If you are stopped or you are confronted with law enforcement, you say yes, sir, no, sir, and thank you, sir. And if there's an issue afterwards, we'll talk about it and we'll act accordingly. But proper respect, and that's it. On both sides, the officer must respect the individual that he or she is stopping or coming into contact with. There should be no lack of respect or manners in that contact, and the officer should expect respect and manners in return. In the perfect world, that's what we should have. That's what we should be expecting and have. Of course, that doesn't always happen that way.
And I'll add just one point that Mr. Clinton and I have actually known each other for a long, long time, and I coached his son in lacrosse. And if you go to school at Reynolds and you happen to play lacrosse, you get too many of my speeches about what to do if you get pulled over or you find yourself in trouble. And the same things that you're teaching Michael over the years are the same things that we talked about in practice all the time, and how to handle yourself and conduct yourself. And it's not, we talk about with law enforcement, but we also talk about in terms of your relationships with women and your teammates and things like that. But I'm glad to hear that, you know, people are, and it is, Reynolds is a very diverse school, and there are African-American children, there are white children too, and Hispanic children. They all get the same lesson from me. And the thing that I would like to just finally say is that when you're on the side of the road and law enforcement is writing you a ticket for speeding or a seatbelt or whatever the case may be, I pushed Lee Garrity and a couple others here in the city to go and buy some more of these cameras that the officers are now equipped with in the city. And I can tell you that if you decide on the side of the road that you're going to object to this ticket and you're going to be disrespectful, chances are almost 100% now that this whole encounter is going to be recorded. So the recordings can work and cut both ways. So citizens need to know that you're not going to see the camera, you're not going to know you're being recorded, but it's important to show respect to the officer, and the officer obviously is going to be recorded at the same time as well. So it'll work both ways.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, thank you for those comments. This is another question from the audience, and this is for Police Chief Roundtree. Does your newly recruited officers have their certification, or do you send them to school to get their certification once they are hired? Once
Once an employee, a police employee, a sworn police, well, a potential sworn police employee, we run our own academy here in Winston-Salem. So they go through a 6-month academy. Our academy is accredited, it's been approved by the state of North Carolina. We use our instructors along with local instructors, maybe some from the Sheriff's Department and also from Forsyth Tech. And once they graduate from our basic law enforcement training program, they do have a state certificate. Last Friday, we graduated 29 new police recruits. They graduated at the convention center and they were sworn in. So they do have their certificate once they graduate. And once they graduate from our basic law enforcement training program, they are then assigned to a field training officer for approximately 4 additional months. And once they get released from field training, they can serve as an independent officer on patrol.
Okay, great. An additional question for Chief Roundtree. Are there any ongoing psychological tests being conducted on officers on an annual basis?
Not on an annual basis. We do have the resources where we can, if we need to, have officers seen or treated for a particular reason.
Okay, and then an additional question again for Chief Roundtree. Okay, are officers being trained with use of military equipment supplied by Homeland Security?
What do you mean military equipment?
I don't want us to go as far as say tanks and that type of thing. I don't think we have those.
No, we don't have any tanks.
I don't think we have those rolling around the city streets.
We don't have any tanks, but we do have a rescue vehicle that's primarily used by our SWAT team. And it is used as a rescue vehicle for citizens and also for police officers. But we don't have any tanks that we received from the military.
Okay, great. All right, this next question is for, let me just take a look at this one here. Okay. All right, this is for the panel. Why do you think African-American males have become a constant victim of police brutality?
I'm joking on that one now. You say a constant, what?
It says a constant victim, or we'll just say a victim of police.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Okay.
I don't think that's true.
Anyone else on the panel want to take a stab at that one? Do you think African-American males are profiled? Maybe we'll rephrase that question a little bit.
I can only address the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, and they are not profiled. We do not operate by profiling anyone. It's against our policies and procedures. It's not the way we do business.
Okay, great. All right, just got a few more questions. Again, we just want to thank our panelists for some really good questions, and thank those who in the audience who are sending up questions. You're definitely sending up some good questions. We'll try to get to the majority of these as we go. So we only have a few more minutes. So if you do have any other questions that you would like to be addressed by the panel, we'll try to get those in. Okay. All right. All right, this next question is going to be for our district attorney. It says, how are levels of charges determined?
How are levels of charges determined? If I understand the question, are we talking about how do you charge somebody with a felony or as opposed to a misdemeanor?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the general statutes prescribe exactly what constitutes a particular crime, and the issue is whether or not law enforcement can prove, again, beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, can they prove that the person charged with that crime, all the elements have been satisfied by statute.
Okay, great. Another question for Chief Roundtree. It says, exactly how long do police officers, and you've kind of answered this somewhat, and I'll just read the question again. Exactly how long do police officers receive adequate training before they are allowed to patrol resident communities?
For a new officer, our basic law enforcement training program is approximately 6 months, depending on what we add or may take away from the training. And again, that is in excess of what's required by the state. And once they graduate from our basic law enforcement training program, they are assigned to a experienced field training officer for approximately 3 to 4 more months. And then they are released independently where they can operate as an independent officer.
Okay. All right, great. All right, this next question is for Commissioner Palmer. What would you like to see in the upcoming years done in our city to continue the progress of law enforcement relations with citizens?
I think that if we continue to have the trust talks, which are very positive energy that we receive every time, because at the trust talks, we give recommendations from the ideas of the small groups to the police department. And in turn, that they're supposed to work on those things to try to provide programs. I know at the last one that we had, we were talking about a possible basketball game between the police department and the community. So those things are, I think, would be very effective, that if you do have that human side of the police department and the community coming together, what a beautiful thing that would be for the city of Winston-Salem if that could happen. So I just think that if our police, what I would like to see as well is have the foot officers in the community, where I own a daycare center, so my children, I have little small babies that are afraid of the police because of the popo, as they would say. But why they're afraid of the police or the popo? So it's very instrumental, I think, for me to have the police officers to come into the daycare centers to talk with the children. So as much as they see a positive side of the police, then you will have a much greater community instead of the negative all the time. So I think more positive programs that is implemented into the community will make us a much better place.
Right, thank you. All right. So as we get closer to wrapping up this session here, we're just going to have just closing remarks from each one of our panelists. Last few words concerning the issues that we've talked about, and if we can just have a few closing remarks, and then we'll move forward. And we'll start with Sheriff Schatzman.
Well, I want to thank the members of the audience for being here, and for the City of Winston and Human Relations for asking me to be here and to participate in this conversation. Certainly, talking is a good thing, and the exchange of ideas and questions and responses is a very good thing. We're very fortunate, in my view, my opinion, that we have the community we have here in Forsyth County, known as Winston-Salem. Certainly, we have Kernersville and the 6 other small municipalities. We have a good population here, and we have a good public safety system here. All can be improved on both sides of that equation. All, just about anything you can think of can be improved, and I think improving it by talking and by gathering together and exchanging ideas is a good thing. And I want to again thank you all for having us here.
Yes, sir. Chief Roundtree.
All right. Again, thank you for being here, taking the time out of your day to come and listen, to see what we have to say. We do have a good community, and I'm a little biased because I've been around for a while. We have a very good police department. We are open. We want to be fair to our citizens. We want to be transparent. We are working on a lot of programs and initiatives where we can improve our relationships with the community. The commissioner mentioned the basketball game. We recently played that basketball game against members of Councilmember Taylor's ward, and we've had several of those type basketball games in the past, and you will see more in the future. We are trying to get out more among the citizens and make cold contacts with them. We're documenting those also. But what I urge the citizens to do is participate in our Citizen Police Academy, and come out and ride. If you really want to see what goes on and you want to see why officers make certain decisions that they make, come and get out and ride with us. And I think that will shape some of your opinions as far as why we do certain things. But thank you for being here, and thank you for having me as a panelist.
Thank you, Chief Roundtree. Attorney Sykes.
Yes, thank you. I would just reiterate what Chief Roundtree said. We're here. We try to be accessible. We try to be available. And rather than, if you have an assumption of something, don't just go with that assumption. Call us, ask, participate, find out what the truth is. The Citizens Police Academy is a great thing. It's very hands-on. You get very involved, and you are able to see exactly what we do. And so I would love to see more people take advantage of that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you, all that are here and participated. And I know it was kind of short notice, but we got it done. I'd just like to say this has been a wonderful opportunity for us to all share ideas, learn a few things or two. And I think that dialogue is very powerful, that we can get the job done together as the community with the various departments that we have here to make a greater community.
Thank you very much. District Attorney O'Neill.
Thank you. And in preparation for tonight, I was asked a question about coming in here as to what is the racial makeup of my office. And so this is, I had an opportunity today to go back and look at that. And the numbers in our office reflect that 32% of all the prosecutors that I employ are minorities, which I think is reflective of the entire community, which I think is a good thing. And the people that I rely on most in my day-to-day job, the people that help me make decisions, the people that review these police shootings with me, serious homicides, are here tonight. Jennifer Martin, who's my chief assistant, if you want to put your hand up there, Ms. Martin, and Lizmar Bosquez, and you put your hand up, please. And those are the people that I rely on and help me make decisions. And I think that our office is a wonderful representation of the community as a whole. We have we are big participants in our office in Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have foster parents in our office. We do a lot of outreach so that people will get to know us better. And one of the requirements that I have when I'm hiring somebody in an office of almost 80, 90 people is that I require them to live here in Forsyth County, because I feel like they are more vested in the community and seeing that the right things are done and they're not packing up at night and going to an adjacent county to go live. They care more about where they live, and they're more involved in their church and things of that nature. So we appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk about what we do as an office. And I think some other information that I wanted to share, I'm going to try and squeeze in here at the very end. I went and looked at some of the shootings in the last 2 or 3 years that involved officers. And back in 2012, we had 1 fatality. In 2013, there were no fatalities. And so far in 2014, we've had 1 fatality. And so those are pretty small numbers when you look at the bigger picture. We do appreciate the time and the energy that you all put in assembling this together, and I think it's good for the community to see who we are as an office and what we try to do in seeking justice.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Again, we want to thank all of our panelists for being a part of this discussion tonight. I think it's been extremely beneficial. And again, I believe that it's helped our citizens. Hopefully, it has answered some questions. Hopefully, you learned some things that you didn't know prior to coming into this session. I've learned quite a few things that each one of these departments are doing, and I'm very pleased to be a part of the city of Winston-Salem. I think we have a great city. We have great city officials, have great leadership, and as Sheriff Schatzman says, we have great public safety here. And so this whole forum was designed to help, in particular, our citizens know that there are policies and procedures in place to help us feel comfortable and secure to live in this great city. And again, we would like to thank all of our panelists for being here. Fantastic job. Again, I think, again, the community has an opportunity to see the human side of our leaders, in particular in public safety and from the attorney's office. So again, thank you for coming and sharing and being a part of this discussion. At this time, I'm going to turn it over into the hands of Ms. Wanda Allen Abraha.
Thank you, Commissioner Clinton. I emphasize Clinton because, in my haste earlier, when trying to get the ball rolling, I called him Commissioner McIntosh because City Council member Jeff McIntosh was giving me this gorgeous smile of reassurance. So I was focused on him. I'm thinking McIntosh. But anyway, so thank you, Commissioner Clinton. And also, yes, this was within the context of Ferguson, Missouri, and Fenton is something that just came into my brain. I don't know where it came from. I understand I said Fenton at least once. If I did, totally my bad. But anyway, as this already been stated, this was a quick turnaround forum because we wanted to address these issues while the issues were still hot. As I stated earlier, Wake Forest, Winston-Salem State, and some others have had forums and rallies centered around what happened in Ferguson. And so we did not want to just kind of bury our heads in the sand and not address this in some way. And so again, to our commissioners, thank you for your support. To our chairperson, Ms. Nora Baker, thank you for your leadership. Barbara Salpa, Sonny Haynes, and Leela Valley, Eusebio Velez, and of course, again, Commissioner Clinton. They were all very instrumental in helping to plan this tonight, and they came up with the questions and everything for you all. And of course, last but not least, we have Shantini Palmer, who is one of our commissioners, who at the very last minute decided to step up to the plate and help us out with the panel tonight, and she did a stellar job, so I really have to give her a special thanks as well. But you see, we have some serious talent. We have some highly skilled people here in our community. We are truly fortunate and blessed to have the people that we do. And they did reply to my urgent email for a need for a forum like that, no hesitation. So I must give them kudos and credit. So thank you again, everyone who came out. And feel free to talk to our panel or anyone in the audience, actually, that you may want to talk to. Special thanks to Ms. LaTerry Ward, who traveled here from the city of Goldsboro, North Carolina, which is down east, as many of you North Carolinians know. She traveled several hours to come because she wanted to observe how we were addressing the Ferguson, Missouri issue, and if we were going to relate it to our local policies and procedures and how we were doing it. So I want to thank Ms. Ward. Ms. Ward, would you please wave to the audience? I want to thank you from the city of Goldsboro for joining us tonight. All right, thank you very much. And again, we appreciate your support. Thank you.